22nd regular business meeting.
Yes. I move we. Second.
Bill moves and Brenda seconds the minutes from the regular business meeting of
Madam Chair,
May 22nd. Yes, what would you like to say?
I have nothing to say. The minutes are perfect.
And I know why. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye of accepting these minutes.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, Vicki. Good job. Reports to the board. LCCC
I
reports.
also need a motion on the June 13th special business meeting minutes.
Oh, I see that one, I'm sorry. I want to bring it to everyone's attention that that was a 7-minute meeting. And that's probably a first and a last, but could I get a motion to approve those minutes from June 13th?
So moved.
Second.
And Don seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Approved. Okay, reports to the board. LCCC reports, SGA. No. No report? Staff Senate, Kevin Yarborough.
Correct?
I think that's
There
you.
shouldn't be any student
Yes.
government yet.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Trustee Merrill, President, Board of Trustees. Just a couple of quick things from the Staff Senate. One, I'd like to thank everybody who came out to the employee picnic a couple of weeks ago, and I see Trustee Kelty's eyebrows are just starting to grow back from working the grill. But
I think it was his hands that were singed.
I got the smoke off of me too.
I figured training would help you though with that, but either way, if you recall last month, I kind of got a little windy up here talking about the status and where we're going with the Staff Senate itself. We had put out a survey to get a consensus of what the staff, which currently is 209 members, that's professional and classified combined. We wanted to make sure that they felt like, well, we were an adequate voice for any concerns that they have. And then from there, we were really interested in if they wanted the Staff Senate as an entity to continue. So while it seems somewhat positive, I was a little disappointed that only 25% of the staff actually participated with the survey. So that puts us at about 52 out of the 209. So only a quarter of them. And then the irony with that is that quarter who did participate, the majority of them want Staff Senate to continue to do the things that it does and represent the staff to you and the president and so forth. The irony with that too, though, is the majority of them do not want to participate. A quick number is currently there's about 10 people out of the whole 200 and some staff members that are interested in being members of Staff Senate. 6 of them are already on Staff Senate, and I don't know who the other 4 are because we can't identify them through the survey, that's okay. The point is we're not real sure what we're going to do with this. So next Monday, the Senate, and I did open it to all staff members to, we're going to meet Monday afternoon and see what they want to do with this from here on out. What's creating a lot of this is when we ask for input about a lot of things, we get very little impact back. So it makes it difficult for us to make decisions on the staff. How do you feel about this topic? How should I present this to the board or take it to the president, and stuff like that, and you just don't get enough feedback to ever be able to justify any comment that you would ever make. So then the Senate members, most of us have been on this thing for 3, 4, 5 years straight, and we've been looking to get new membership for people to have these opportunities to be officers also and represent the staff and such, and right now we're just drawing blanks. Nobody wants this, so we're just kind of at a loss right now what our mission is and stuff like that, and that's what we hope to. Hopefully we figure out maybe a new mission that can create a little more interest and stuff like that, and keep the Senate going. But right now, a lot of the officers, it's time to it's time for us to move on to other things, and other things come up and other opportunities. And I know for my own example, you know, I became a board member of the Wyoming Interpreters a couple of weeks ago, and I've got to make room for that. And so, and we're all kind of in that. And so I hope we can keep the Senate going, but we need some folks to step in and be part of it to do it. So, any questions from me?
Question?
I'd like to say congratulations on your board work for the interpretive group. Do you get a sense that they feel, you know, in a way, you guys have done such a great job that they don't, you know, we're happy with you, don't change the status quo?
Well, part of this survey was people could give inputs on ideas of where they think we should go and things we should do and stuff like that. And somebody had actually made a comment that they were very pleased with what Melissa and myself had done over the last 5 or 6 years. And the feeling was you guys should keep pressing on with it. And the reality is we need to step away from it. When I look at this, I've talked to Jerry about this, and maybe you folks see the same thing, but you know, some of us come from the same shell or nutshell or whatever, but we just volunteer. We volunteer, we're part of groups and organizations, representative bodies, so forth and so on. And my experience with working with the Boy Scouts Honor Society, working with the veterans here on campus, and obviously with Staff Senate, is there seems to be a shift to a degree of less and less people being involved in things. We see this, and that's not a LCCC staff thing, that's the societal thing. And so there's less and less people being involved with things out there that they could be part of, whether it's a representative body, a volunteer group that does things for other people. I call them service-oriented groups, and that's really what the veterans thing was supposed to be. That's what the Boy Scouts Honor Society is. That's what this is. That's what the Rotaract is. And I know Jeff Schmidl's not with us anymore, but I interpreted all the PTK meetings, and they're having their struggles too. And it's the same thing. These service organizations, people going out and helping take care of other people and stuff like that. Those numbers, in my opinion, throughout society, not just on campus, is dwindling and dwindling, and we may just be dealing with that. So, if that makes any sense, I don't mean to get long-winded, but I put a lot of thought into trying to figure out what the veterans need and want, what the staff needs and want, what my teenagers out there want, and stuff. I put probably way too much thought in it, and I can't seem to figure it out, except I only have time for me and not everybody else. And I hate to say that, but that's what it just seems to be, so.
And thank you for serving. Thank you very much for serving. And I know that you'll figure this out, and if this group decides not to go on, then we will understand. I hope that that isn't what happens. I hope that you do find someone.
Right,
to
there's many
step in.
reasons to keep it going. The staff needs a voice, and the reality is, I
Right.
heard that years ago, Faculty Senate went through the same thing.
Mm.
It fell apart, and a year or two later, the faculty realized we need a voice, and it came
Mhm.
back. College Council went away years ago, now it's back. So if Staff Senate did go away, I think eventually they would all of a sudden say, hey, we need to rebuild this so we can have a venue to take our concerns to and stuff. So I think it would come back, but then, you know, who's gonna put on the employee picnic? Or, you know, we have a scholarship, you know, who's gonna maintain that and take care of that? There's a lot of reasons. Kevin Yarbrough doesn't wanna be known as the president that made Staff Senate fail, you know, so,
It's not your fault.
I'm just, that's kind of, I don't think it is my fault, but.
And you meet
it's
every
interesting.
month, Kevin? Do you meet?
We do. It gets
Every
a little
month?
sporadic during the summer, and that's why you probably haven't seen minutes
No,
here
it's
lately.
okay.
But we've We've even struggled in the last couple of months to get our officers to be able to get together. And so, and some of that seems to be that a lot of us, not me so much, I would say, but are involved in departments or divisions that are going through a lot of change, and that produces a little more time that they need to be in the office and not being able to give to the, per se, to the volunteer side. And that can happen. I mean, that can be expected, but so there's a lot of reasons, I guess, so.
Well, thank you, Don.
Kevin, in your survey, you had a 25% response.
24.8, actually.
25% response. Did you have any generalizations that would be of interest to this group?
Of why,
No. Well,
why the
I
other
didn't see the
75?
survey, and I'm not sure what the questions were, but did you receive any data that would be of interest to the board? Any generalizations that you could recall, anything that popped up, any trends?
Yes, but reluctantly, I'm going to hold that until after, the Senate has not discussed these
All right.
results yet.
Okay, that's fair enough.
So, I do not wanna go into those details. Some of that we need to, make sure that those are valid before, I would say, crying wolf.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We hope to see you next month.
Somebody will be here next.
Okay. Thank you.
If
so
anything,
much.
just say bye, I don't know.
We want to keep up that employee picnic. It's lots of fun. Okay.
Madam Chair, you
Yes,
do
sir.
know that the phenomenon that Kevin talked about, the sort of the demise of voluntary association, was a subject of a book that was called Bowling Alone. And I don't know, anybody know the book? And I think it's probably 10 years old at this point, but
Do you have it?
yes, even 10
May I
years ago,
borrow
we
it,
were in
please?
dire straits. It's even worse now.
Things cycle. Okay, next, Faculty Senate, Rob?
We
Where are
have
you?
not met, and so I have no report.
Well, thank you for coming.
But I would like to put a plug in for Jerry's Service Learning. I think we're doing a fine job with our students, getting them in a mindset of public service and stuff, and maybe our graduates are gonna change the tide.
Maybe they won't be bowling alone. Thank you, Rob. LCCC, Mohammed, that would be
Madam Chair,
you.
members of the board, President Schaefer, we have nothing to report at this moment. We continue to have our meetings with, our monthly meetings with the president, and he's listening, so that's
Perfect.
good.
Thank you very much. Now we have the president's report. I'll just let you take that away.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Three things that I want to just update you on. The first one is draft priorities to the foundation. As you recall, we entered into a new 3-year operating agreement with the foundation about a year ago now. It's been almost a year. One of the provisions within that agreement had a requirement that the president provide to the foundation board a list of development priorities for the coming fiscal year. The intent behind that was to formalize some type of direction or communication between the college and to the foundation, so that it was clear what the college needs and the direction we're going would fit with what we were asking the board to do from a philanthropic position. And so I presented that. It was actually due at the end of May. I had it done at the end of May. Had presented that to the foundation's development committee, and I thought I'd just highlight you what is in there. It still needs to be discussed with foundation staff tomorrow and the foundation board, but I thought you might find no surprises per se, so I thought I'd just share those with you. The first priority I asked them, of course, is the Building Forward Facilities Campaign. Major priority for us in the coming year. The second one was trying to start to shift the focus of our support for athletics from a truly general fund support to include and actually increase the amount of private giving that would be going towards athletics. And so to relieve some of the general fund pressure and use private giving to support our athletic programs. And I asked them specifically in 2 areas. One, to really start to strengthen the booster club, to increase broader participation in the community with athletics, just grow the numbers of people who have an affiliation, a connection to LCCC athletics. And then the second was in athletic scholarships. I would like to see, and I would like the foundation's help to see us move and build private scholarship dollars to scholarship our athletes so that the institution isn't bearing the brunt or the entirety of scholarshiping those athletes. And I think that's more in line with what the other community colleges in the state and the region are doing. So that was the second priority. The third is to expand the Golden Apple Grant Program. The Golden Apple Grants, I think everybody knows what those are wonderful seed money, if you will, for innovative projects that our faculty and staff, predominantly our faculty, have taken advantage of. And it's one of those areas where we have flexibility for people to explore things that may not fit perfectly into what we're doing specifically on campus or what they fit in their operating budget. And I think it's an opportunity that we have. And so I'm asking the foundation to actually expand that program and see if we can't put more Golden Apple grants on the table. The fourth one is to grow new institutional scholarship programs. And so, Madam Chair, I know you are well aware of some of our work on scholarships and waivers and what we're trying to do to bring some clarity and focus to our scholarship programs. But there are gaps that we have currently, I believe, in what we're doing in terms of financial assistance to students. And one of the big ones is a relatively small amount that goes to need-based aid. Most of our scholarship programs and aid programs, institutionally funded, and many in the foundation, are really merit-based aid. And we have a need and an opportunity to put more dollars on the table. I would like to see the institution establish scholarship programs that fit some of these gaps and have those funded both from the institution and also from private giving. So I'm going to ask that the college staff and the foundation staff work together to define what these programs are and start to look at ways to actually provide seed money to get the scholarship programs off the ground. And then the last one is really just about cultivating new donors and strengthening the existing ones. We have some wonderful relationships. I think we can be even more proactive in cultivating new donors and sponsors to the college. Looking at some of our opportunities with corporate development, I think we're well on the way with that. But really an opportunity we have to not only build on what we have, but take a look at what we're doing right now to identify new and future donors to the college. And so pretty simple and straightforward, and I think very relevant to the direction we're going. So I'll pause there if there are any questions about priorities for the foundation.
I have one, it's a question of definition and understanding. What are the waivers?
I have an answer for that. I have an answer because I have learned through working with Judy Hay that a waiver is a pass-through. We give $100,000, it never leaves our institution, we award it, and the people use it here. Now, you get to.
Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, a waiver is simply differentiated from a scholarship in that we're waiving some expense to the student versus actually providing a monetary benefit to the student to be used for an educational. So we most oftentimes associate that with waiving tuition costs.
And it was very confusing to many of us on this committee because I love knowing that that money is money in a waiver that never leaves the institution. It's awarded and kept here. So I learned something. Dr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Oh, yes,
Madam Chair, would those waivers relate to how we're using the scholarship funds from the book sales from the bookstore?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosher, no, I don't believe so. They're different funding inputs for different programs, and that's one of the key pieces we've been working on is we've sort of grouped everything into the concept of scholarship, and the reality is we have different financial mechanisms available, and so we're sort of differentiating that. But those dollars truly do go into scholarships, and I believe most of the scholarships have been associated with book scholarships. So,
80,000.
80,000?
Madam Chair, the second thing I wanted to update you on, and actually I'm going to ask Vice President Hay to update you on, is just on where we're at with financial aid and some of the progress they're making down there, as well as some of the challenges that I know they're working on. So, Judy.
Thank you, Chairwoman Merrill and members of the board. I just really asked Joe if I could come and thank you for the help that you have given us in financial aid and student services, and ultimately for students to provide the assistance we've needed to get through a very rough year. We, as you recall, we had consultants come in, the Evans Group come in last fall to do an operational review of our financial aid office, to look at the people, the processes, and the procedures that we have going on in there to let us know if we have some room to improve. And in the course of that, our financial aid director resigned and went back to Montana. And so we had a gap in leadership, and because we had just done that review, we needed to really finish that. They weren't finished with that process. She actually left while they were here. And so we asked you for some financial assistance to hire an interim through the Evans Group to get us through some tough time and not lose momentum, because having a gap would have been rather detrimental to our operation and further deteriorated our service to students and probably put us backwards instead of forward in addressing the compliance and the other issues that we had that came up in the review. So we hired we had an interim come in, and Rhonda Pickerel has been here with us. I think some of you have met her.
Mm-hmm.
She's been just fabulous for us and has been working on all of the pieces of the compliance review to make sure that we're making progress on those. And so we've made some very measurable progress toward putting some policies and procedures in place, to changing some other policies and procedures that have been contributors to some of our problems in financial aid. And so we're miles ahead of where we started last year, and I'm happy to tell you we've made a successful hire, and we have a new financial aid director, a permanent director, coming on board July 8th, and her name is Julie Wilson. She comes to us from Marygrove College in Michigan, Detroit, Michigan. So I think we're cleaning out the state of Michigan. We've got, one of our deans is coming from Michigan too. And she has a great experience in putting kind of a rocky outfit on solid feet again, and she is a whiz with the colleague system, which is our student information system, and that's another one of those gaps that we have, is just the use of our technology. So I am thrilled that she's going to be joining us, and the staff are prepared, they're excited. They're thrilled to know that we're not gonna go backwards and have someone having to do a lot of getting up to speed. I've sent her this compliance review, I've sent her all the information, and she's just hot on the email, and she found a place to live. So we're really excited about that, and I just wanted to thank you. We're still not where we need to be with financial aid. We still have a few things that happen now and again with our students, and particularly in our veterans area. But we are working very, very hard to shore those things up, and I would look for us to be in substantially more solid place in 6 months to a year to say we are the best. So thank you for your support in that area.
Judy, as long as you're here, I have a question that comes up. You said you had a little difficulties with the veteran area. My question is not what are the difficulties, but are we having any trends in the number of veterans or, say, reservists that are coming to the college and looking for GI benefits, GI Bill benefits?
I haven't so far seen or heard that we have a substantial increase right now. I think it's been steady numbers. We've got, usually around 350 students or people using veterans educational benefits, and so that's kind of different from saying veterans. But that's a steady and strong group.
Anyone else? Judy, I want to thank you so much, because I knew that you had a huge job ahead of you when you took the job, and I knew that you had a backbone, because Joe told us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do worry that backbone is being bent with the load that we've been putting on her shoulders, but I have complete confidence we'll get there. So I want to echo her gratitude for the support you have for helping us get through that hump, if you will, and I think we're over it. The last thing, Madam Chair, members of the board, that I just want to update you on and thought to bring to your attention, we've been approached by Verizon Wireless, or at least a consultant working for Verizon Wireless. They have an extreme interest in placing a cellular tower on our campus. for whatever reason, and looking at their network in the market, this is an ideal location for them. Land leases, both with public and private entity for cellular tower placement are fairly commonplace, especially with the rise of cellular phones and all that good stuff. We've been working with legal counsel to look at a few things. One of them is to look at, what is the appropriate mechanism for actually even considering that. Is that something you have to bid out? How does it work? It sounds like there's some telecom regulations that allow the position of a tower, but then other companies can access or append to the tower and all that good stuff. We're trying to research, and Jerry Harris has actually put together some pretty good data on what those types of lease arrangements would yield in terms of annual leases. And it would be a significant financial benefit to the institution. And then we're also looking at, okay, where would it go, and what would it look like, and what would it do? They have preferred locations that they've identified on campus, which I think are more proximate to the road on the west or east end of the campus. There are some alternates that would either be by the north physical plant or even in the west pasture. So I've asked Tim McNamara and others to consider where that would actually go and how that would work. And there's some options if it's close to travel corridors to do a tower that would actually be customized and branded for the college. And so we're looking at that. I would say they're very, very interested in doing it, and they would like to secure it. This seems to be a hot spot with them, and so we'll continue to look at at least the options from a legal perspective, and then look at what the options are from a business perspective, if you will. But I wanted to update you on that, see if you had questions, and also get some guidance in this type of situation. I don't know that we have clear policy and procedures on how you want to be involved in these types of things, if it's something you would like the board to approve and see, if it's something you would like me to do. But that was the other thing, was trying to get a sense of where you might want us to go with this conversation.
Madam Chair.
Trustee Kilty?
Well, I've got a number of questions. Does anyone know if a cell tower is placed on another public entity in this county? Anybody know?
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, I don't believe in this county. In the state, though, I believe there are.
Have they talked about how many transponders would be on this tower and what their power would be?
They may have, Trustee Kilty, not with me. I can certainly find out.
Would it require any modifications to any of our campus infrastructure to supply power to it, or is the power coming from another place?
Not to my knowledge. Any type of infrastructural improvements would be at the cost of Verizon. Maintenance, all those things, and in fact, then they would ask for a right-of-way easement to get 24/7 access essentially to that. Power cost, I'm not sure on that one. If they would be responsible for the power costs, I believe. How that's metered and how that's differentiated, I don't know the details of that at this point, but I think it's spelled out in the contract. I don't know if our legal counsel remembers seeing that specifically about the power costs.
I believe the power costs are handled by Verizon, but I can double check that, Trustee Kilty. And to answer another question you had, there may be other entities in the county that do have towers. I cannot recall specifically, but in fact, the city building might. I'd be happy to look at that and get back to you as well.
Thank you.
A quick
Trustee
question,
Erickson.
from an information technology point of view, would there be a benefit to the college for televideoing by having this tower so close to us?
Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, I don't know whether or not that would actually increase the service and things. So when we're doing cellular communications, or if our students are using their phone to access whatever, whether or not that would actually increase the service to them. My basic non-scientific thought would be proximity. Sure, you would have that increase there. I'm not 100% positive if this is one of their advanced installations for their 4G network, or which I'm assuming it's the new network, which is their 4G, which is incredibly faster than their 3G network, which could have an impact on that. But I'm speculating at this point. I do not believe there'd be any additional educational value to it, because I think for proprietary reasons, our students wouldn't necessarily have access to the technology or to do it. But you would think that the proximity of a new tower on a new network would increase some of the signal service to people who are Verizon customers.
Any other questions? I guess just keep us informed.
Madam Chair, that is my report.
Thank you so much. Good report. Next, we have board reports. Capital Campaign, Bill Du Bois or Don Erickson or both?
Well, we haven't met. Lisa, you have something you'd like to present to us?
Certainly, if you would like me
Yeah.
to. Madam Chair, members of the board, we have not had a steering committee meeting since your last meeting. The focus groups have been completed by Align, and they have given us their final report. So I will be booking our next steering committee meeting hopefully later this week.
Great.
So we will have an update for you at your next meeting.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, Strategic Planning, Bill Du Bois and Ed Mosier. I think these.
Well, Ed and I have been Don attended last week, and Ed and I have been there all both times last week and then today, and then we come back tomorrow.
Okay.
And it's, I'm just gonna say it's coming along fine. We had some marvelous speakers last week from town people and so on, and they came and told us what they saw as what the college needed and how we needed to proceed and all. I thought they all did a very good job. And today we talked about core values and first of all, the mission of the college. Ed may have more to add.
I'd just add that Joe was leading that effort, and I think it was very productive in terms of those folks there, including myself, getting a better grip on what we're perhaps moving toward in terms of our mission, not really seeking necessarily a significant change, but rather wordsmithing, I think might be a good way to look at it, but important points about changes on that. And then look forward to moving further down the path with regards to core values we also worked on, and that's a very interesting discussion. So look forward to seeing the results of that as we bring that forward.
And those results will come to the board when you're finished?
Yes, of course.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the process, so I would say we're about almost halfway through the process after tomorrow of where we're at. The timeline that's been presented and working out would actually have the drafts after developing, designing, feedback from the campus community, going to President's Cabinet, College Council, and then to the trustees. And my goal and my hope is that they'll actually be before you at your August business meeting for your approval. And so if that requires them to be at your August study session, and
I don't think we have
Oh.
a study session. in
so they will be
August.
before you before that then.
Perfect.
But our goal is to still have it considered and approved at August, and it'll be one of the foundational elements as we launch the next academic year in the fall.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Those would be, critical to us in September, I believe. Are we looking at a retreat in September?
I don't know that we are. I know we're gonna have those roundtable discussions with at least 3 groups on campus, and I don't know whether we should have the retreat before that, probably not, Kevin Kilty says, but after perhaps those roundtable discussions. We can talk about that.
I guess I'm just thinking how we align once the strategic plan is done,
Mhm.
then we're really looking at that to try to have some direction for the budget, which we would start thinking about. In other words, broad guidance for the budget at that point. And that's why I was kind of thinking, there's 2 things at play with those various groups we would be looking at, meeting the roundtables, but also in terms of trying to understand how we as a board would apply or look towards those outcomes that we're seeking for the year. I think, I don't know.
Madam Chair, Trustee Moser, certainly our hope is that the strategic plan provides the guidance for all the things we do, and one of those being the development of our fiscal year 15 budget which will indeed commence as early as September, and start working on that. So without a doubt, how you want to use the interaction with the different groups on campus, that really is something that's up to you to determine, and certainly I'll help with that in any way I can.
Well, we have trustee
Madam Chair,
Erickson.
you're currently at the Strategic Planning Committee level, you're looking at core values. Now that is by definition totally separate than the Common Core.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
No relation.
Wanted a clarification of that.
Okay. Thank you for working so hard on that and for attending so many early meetings, each of you.
Well, I want to get out of trustee 101 as fast as I can.
I think you've made it.
No, the more I know, the more I know I don't know.
Well, as life goes, right? Okay. Well, thank you very much. And number 3 is Finance and Facilities, Kevin Kilty and Ed Mosier, and I attended that meeting, and I was really impressed. Thank you very much.
You were.
I was.
I'm not sure what impressed you, but
was-
was it favorably impressed or
Yes.
not? Okay. We had a fairly lengthy meeting on the 11th of June. It went on 2 hours, and it was attended by Trustee Erickson and Chairwoman Merrill. I'll just run down the list of things that we talked about and make some general comments, and then I want to talk a little bit about a suggestion that Don made that I'm certainly not opposed to, but since it deviates from general practice around here, I'll discuss it with the board. Really, the first hour of the meeting was a long report from McGee, Hearn, and Pies. It was actually mostly Wayne talking in there, and it was really just regarding general parameters of the audit and so forth. Nothing terribly specific, but Wayne managed to talk for an hour. And we will have an audit planning meeting on June 25th, and I think any trustee is welcome to that. Talk about, particular issues that or particular troubles that trustees may bring forward and might guide the audit. Then we had some general comments on the budget. I don't think any of those were noteworthy enough to really talk about, but we talked about this year's budget process and how, and at least in general terms, some improvements for the future. At all of these meetings, we always have fund balance sheet and budget reports. This time, people can look at them. They're linked on the minutes. If you want to look at them, there was really nothing out of the ordinary. The only item that elicited any comment from a trustee was on the construction trade inventory item on assets, why the sudden change in valuation. And of course, that was to move that piece of property that we own in the Point from its cost based on what we actually have in it back to a reasonable market value. And the difference there was about, it's pretty close to $70,000. And if you've ever been in that house, it makes sense. So, you've been in it quite a bit.
I'd be happy to tell you all about it.
Now, item number 4, Don's suggestion. Don thought that because budget is such a large part of the board's responsibility, that perhaps that budget committee should have approval of the budget report voted on. And I'm not opposed to that. His suggestion and his clarification to me came pretty late in the meeting, and I didn't have any notes by then to even prepare any minutes of that meeting. But I thought this sort of deviates. I don't remember that we've ever voted on subcommittee reports ever before. And so I'll ask the board. I'm perfectly willing to prepare brief reports of the meeting, and then I can move to approve, and we can do that. But what does the rest of the board think about that? Is that something we want to do?
Well, let me speak up a little bit.
Sure.
I think as a trustee, we have a fiduciary responsibility about the overall financing of this institution. Yes, we do approve the annual budget, but for the record, demonstrating that we review the balance sheet and the auxiliary fund on a monthly basis, and we see how the cash is flowing and expending, and we put that by way of a motion, and we basically are saying to the community, yeah, we're doing our job. We're looking at the finances on a monthly basis. And that's where I'm coming from on that. It's just a matter of demonstrating our overall awareness on a monthly basis of what's happening out at the college as far as our revenue and expenses.
Question. I don't have the information in my head, and I should know, but we, from time to time, we have an annual budget process. But from time to time, we also get additional reports from Carol. We get, various expenditure reports from Carol during the course of the year, and do we approve those reports too? They're information only.
Updating.
Well, I don't think this has to be put to a formal vote. I mean, just a nod. People think it's important for me to prepare a report like that month by month and have the board approve it.
Well, you give a report, but, excuse me, Madam
Well, it's
Chair.
verbal.
Verbal's
Interrupt it
fine.
again. Verbal report, but I don't think we need to vote.
Your verbal report is actually reviewing, you know, the balance sheet and the auxiliary fund. Now, you added some additional items, that's fine. But I'm speaking about actually approving receipt of the auxiliary fund budget and auxiliary budgets. That's all I'm saying.
Don, if I understand you correctly, we would simply be saying that we recommend as the F&F committee the approval of the balance sheet for May 2013 as presented by Carol, and also for the current fund budget for July 1 through June 30, 2013. Is
Correct.
that what
Right.
you would look for, that kind of formal,
Right.
so that, and you would want that each month, right?
Correct. That's what I'm requesting.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair, so what would be the outcome of our vote? If we say yes, we vote to approve that report, what would be the purpose and the outcome of that?
Well, it's a matter of record then, and it's then published in the newspaper, is it not? Our meeting minutes are published?
No.
Oh, they're not? Okay, well, it's then by our secretary over there, we have in the minutes,
Vicky.
in the minutes that we have officially approved the monthly financial report that is submitted to us by Carol, reviewed by our finance committee.
I'm fine with it, and.
Fine with it not doing it or doing it?
Fine with doing it. I don't see any problem at all, and I'll just change past pattern right now by moving that we accept the report as delivered to the Budget Finance Subcommittee by Carol and her underlings on June 11th.
And I would second that.
And by way of discussion, Carol, I think you don't have any problem with that either, do you?
No, Madam Chair, trustees, the approval of financial statements is a very common practice for boards, and it is a way to formalize their review, oversight, and ultimately, I guess, acceptance of financial statements. It satisfies their fiduciary responsibility as a governing board, and so I think it's common practice. One thing you could consider to put on the table, and I've often thought this with the procurement report that you receive under your additional information items, is again thinking about a consent agenda. I know that Chairman Thomas at the time was not a fan of that, but you receive numerous reports and different things that you may not want to spend considerable time discussing, but want to have the formal record that you've reviewed and ultimately a consent to accept or approve, or however you want to form that, and this may be another good opportunity to include that.
Okay, this is an interesting and good discussion, and our foundation at the hospital, we approve the budget every single month that we have them, so I think it's a valuable tool to use.
Question on the motion then.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 We will have a new review committee then, monthly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Don.
And thank you, everyone. Okay, now number 9, we have 2014 LCCC budget, second reading, and that will be done by Carl Hoagland and Dr. Shaker.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, and even though Carol's up there, I may ask for a slight personal privilege. We have some special guests here tonight, and one of them are one of our students, Mr. Daniel Russell, but also Jerry Grego and Jenny Rigg, to talk about the process for the allocation this year of the student fees, the SFAC committee, Student Fee Allocation Committee. I know you've had an interest in knowing how those monies are evaluated and ultimately distributed to campus. They are carried, as Vice President Hoagland has mentioned, in our agency funds, so we act as basically a financial support mechanism for the agency, in this case the students. But I've been very impressed with the process that they put into place this year. I think it does provide some clarity, and even though they're student funds that we just help facilitate the monitoring of, if you will, you do have a responsibility, because you have a responsibility for over the students and all those great things. And so one of the things we're recommending is that what they present tonight and on an annual basis, what they present in terms of their process and ultimate allocation of these fees to different groups on campus become an appendices within your budget books, and that's what we would do this year. So you have the information. It's not a formal component that we provide to the commission, but it's good information so that you know that the students, faculty, and staff are actually taking a very rigorous and appropriate approach to the allocation of those fees. And so I know I've been personally impressed by the process, so I'm wondering if we could just flip-flop that and have Daniel and Jerry and Jenny maybe do their part first, and then we can get into the budget reading.
Let's do that, please. Thank you, Jen.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Schaefer, thanks for having us. Like I said, I'm Daniel Russell. I'm a computer science major here at the college. I was on a committee with 11 other students to allocate these fees. The notes that you have before you are pretty self-explanatory. I'll just give a little bit of background information, kind of some of the steps that we took as a committee, and then if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy with my constituents to answer those for you. Basically, Jenny helped select different students of different majors. I was one of two from my field. And we were all brought into a room, explained what our duties would be. We would be responsible for basically going through the different clubs and organizations that asked to receive SFAC funds, and then review basically the need and the academic standpoint of how well those were to be distributed. And so what we did is we, as a committee, kind of ranked what our priorities were, whether a club organization, how much fundraising they did, how much academic purpose they had, how much travel, competitive or non-competitive travel, how that fit in. And that just gave us a good standpoint of where to go from the start. And then we had all the different clubs and organizations come in. They were each given 5 minutes to present why they needed the money that they requested. And then we had 10 minutes to ask them questions, to say, you know, what can you do without? Because we had a lot more requests this year than we had funds available. So we had to make quite a few cuts. So that was one question that was standard, was what can you do without in your budget? And all of the clubs were pretty, they're pretty helpful in doing without some things. And so then we all voted on it, took a rank, went around, compiled the scores, averaged them, and then it was on to the next club and organization. We did that for all the different clubs, and then we met together and, you know, started the chopping block basically. As you can see, we met our budget. We went underneath it, in fact. And then there's an appeals process. I wasn't actually involved in the appeals process, as Dr. Schaefer knows. That was the only meeting I was unfortunately unable to attend. And so then we gave back some funds as more information was provided on where the money would go to and such. Then one thing that we wanted to bring forward, Dr. Schaefer has been given a list of recommendations that we found. Some of the clubs you'll see, I believe there's one on there that had 137% allocated funds. So we gave them more than they had asked for, and the reasoning behind that was because of a difference in forms. Some clubs had been given an older form with different money values than are currently accurate in the SVAC process, the policy, I guess. And so we had to go through and update that, and so it was a little bit more than what they had originally requested for. So that was one of our recommendations, was just to review those standards, make sure all of the clubs and organizations had the current processes, and then to go from there. Another thing that we had run into was some clubs and organizations are required on campus. If you're in a certain program, such as a lot of the health science programs, you're required to be in that club. And so it was a struggle for us as a group to allocate those funds where you were required as a student to be in a club and automatically given student fees for joining that club just because you're a certain major. So that would be one thing we would recommend that you look into. And then finally, I'm drawing a blank here. The operational, thank you. Another thing that some student fees cover are operational funds, and so our recommendation is that to go back to the general fund where, since it's a year-to-year thing that automatically comes out, that it might be budgeted for. So, I don't think I missed anything else.
Very good job, Daniel.
Thank you. Are
Yes,
there
any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
You answered one of my questions quickly. You said that you didn't quite use all of your budget, so it's not all extinguished. What happens with the remaining budget?
I believe that goes directly into contingency fund, because some clubs and organizations, at the end of the year, they'll have people make nationals, such as for like horse judging and other clubs and organizations on campus, and so you can never put too much into contingency fund, because you never know from year to year how many students are going to need access to those funds.
Well, that brings up another question then. If you've got these contingency funds and they're to be used for travel at a later time, what happens if those students end up graduating in the meantime? How do you handle that? It could easily be that these students get some sort of an award and they have actually finished their program by the time they're able to use it. What occurs then?
Within the contingency process, we have an appeal process, and so sometimes we look at that as a case-by-case basis, and so what we've asked of this committee is that they continue on throughout the year with us. So when they return in the fall, we'll have those same students participate in the ongoing process, because if a student is representing LCCC and they have graduated but could attend a post-season travel opportunity, then we want to make sure that that's covered. Currently, within the SVAC, the rules, it says you must be a student in order to qualify. And so part of within my department, when we took over the student fee allocation process this year, we held to the line that the policy says. We know the policy's not perfect, but we followed it to the letter of the law, and I think that was kind of a monumental change in that we really held it to what the restrictions and rules are. The next step for us is to work with the students, and we've been waiting for our faculty advisors to come back to review what are the rules and standards, because that policy's not been updated for years. And so it's really not as current and it's not as flexible for things like that as we need it to be. So the contingency, it's required that 8% of all of the funds available within that student fee pot go automatically into the contingency fee. So what we did this year is we took the 8% and put that in contingency on right away. The contingency was overspent to the point where this year I was left with about $3,200 for all postseason travel for all students. And so it was really, really tough. So we took that 8% and automatically put that in. Then the students decided that the best way to handle the appeal process was to put 4% in addition to that 8% aside for appeals. And so after all the funds were allocated, then there was funding left over, and they put that into the contingency fund, so that as things come up during the year, they have the ability to allocate some of those funds as well. So, for example, last year we had some students who made they qualified for a national art competition that many times, I think it was the first time community college students were ever invited to participate. And so that is what the fund is for. And so we fully funded their trip and for their advisor to go with them. So it's for things like that, those unpredictable things. That's what contingency's for.
I got a couple of other questions. One is, you say only one paid advisor on these trips, and if they need more advisors than that, they're supposed to find that money from another account. First of all, that's one advisor independent of how many students might be taking the trip. It's not based on the number of students. But if it's money from another account, could you give me an example of what other account would that money come from then?
Within the policy rules, the SVAC policy rules say only one advisor can be funded per trip unless the trip deems it necessary that more than one attend. And so when they did the process review and met with all the advisors, the first thing they looked at was compliance. And so that took the committee quite a bit of time, because they looked at, okay, this is the amount of money people are funded for their airplane tickets. This is the amount of people that are allowed on the trip. And so they held everyone to the same standards. And then we had some groups, for instance, in one of our auto tech programs, they go and their Skills USA. Skills USA competes in auto tech, auto diesel. There's so many different components that they compete in. And so that was one advisor. But when they came in, they said, well, I represent auto body and I need to represent my student. I represent auto diesel. And so they were able to allocate funds for each of the advisors. So if it's deemed necessary, then absolutely. Otherwise, the students recommended that they go back to their division budget and ask for funding to travel from the general fund.
Okay, I don't have any. I have
Matt.
no more questions.
Just a quick question for clarity. There's the total amount of the requests were, I think, well, no, I should say the total amount of fees available were 410,000. The requests were above that significantly. And I'm just wondering if you or Carol perhaps could tell me, how did we get to the 410? Where did that source of funds come from?
Those funding, the amount allocated each year comes from Jane Myrick and from their office. So she tells us what funds are available. And so once we know what the funding available is, then we go to our allocation process.
Okay, so
You still don't know. Jane! Or Carol.
Well, what I do each year is I estimate the revenue for tuition and fees, et cetera, and so this is one area that I would estimate what fees would be coming in for the following year. And then I do deduct the amount for, there's 2 positions paid from this funding source, as well as some student salaries, I think about 21,000 or so. So I estimate the revenue and then I deduct that off, and then the remaining balance is what I give to Jenny and Danielle to allocate.
So, okay, what generates that? Which fee, how much? Are we talking per
It's-
credit, per, you know?
It's the student fee, and is it a
It's an activity fee.
fee? And I wanna say it's $10 per credit hour, but I'm not certain. I can look that up and get back to you tomorrow.
That's okay. That's enough on that, because of what I'm looking for was, that's what's generating the amount of money then that's used for this. And I
Right,
was just
it's
looking for the
student
sourcing of
fee.
that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more
Madam
questions?
Chair, along the $410,000, that's what's gonna be anticipated. And the request that were approved is $375,000. There's an additional $35,000 that is over and above what is put into the contingency. So what happens to that $35,000? Does it carry over to the next year?
Right, kind of like last year where they were pretty short on the funding. Any extra funding automatically goes into that contingency fund for later use.
So the contingency fund could be much more than 32,000 by the time the end of the year comes, if you haven't used any of it.
Yes, sometimes that does in fact happen. For example, we might have an organization that thinks they're gonna have 6 people travel for competitive travel, and maybe someone is ill and so they only have 5 throughout that season. Whatever funding is left over from each of the organizations or the requests, all that funding automatically goes into the contingency fee, or contingency fund. And the good part with the student fee fund is that contingency continues to roll over and grow. So unfortunately, it was depleted to the point that it was almost non-existent when we took it over this last year. And so one of our main goals is to make sure that that is a healthy budget so that we never have to tell a student who's qualified to a national competition that we don't have funding for them to participate, because we want to make sure that we honor our students in that way. So we're trying to grow it.
And Madam Chair, members of the board, and one of the, Trustee Erickson, one of the things that I've appreciated about this approach is the conservative nature in which they've approached their budgeting. As Jane just mentioned, this is a revenue estimate, and as you have fluctuations in enrollment, or even the structure of enrollment, it could be up or down. And the nice thing that I like about this, especially learning, I think after last year when funds got so tight, that we've been very conservative. The students have been very conservative in their approach to budgeting this to allow for some of that fluctuation.
I wonder if we could get some of you to go to Washington.
You should, because I think Terry and I could both testify that I've been through lots of budget processes in my time, and they were ruthless. It was great. So we could all use their help.
Indeed. I got to operate kind of as the sage of the group since I had been through the budget process a number of times, and I can tell you that there was every effort made to make this a very transparent and objective process, almost painfully so some days. The students really, locked horns on some difficult issues, and they indeed learned the art of compromise and negotiation.
Yes.
Skills that would be well served in Washington.
I think one night we stayed till, 8:30. We started at 8 in the morning and ended at 8:30.
Yeah.
So
They
we're like, just make a decision.
They really worked hard on this.
Yes, they did. We're very proud of them.
And Madam Chair, members of the board, if I may, Daniel very well could be on his way to Washington. Depends on how well his computer science faculty are, right, Rob?
Would that be the national security agent?
He can't confirm or deny.
I don't have the security clearance to tell you that.
But you might.
Apparently, they give them away pretty easy.
He is a very engaged student in college council and other things, and so we sure appreciate his engagement in this process. And just for the record, Student Government Association and this committee did give us recommendations, and the recommendations are sound, and I think it's one of the things we've been asking for in terms of clarity of what is the intended purpose of these funds. And there are areas where we have been funding things with these fees that really are more appropriately funded out of the general fund. And so we're going to take those recommendations to heart and make those adjustments as we develop the budgets for coming years, because I think they're appropriate. And so we've listened to the students and certainly want to move in the direction. And then just to answer the previous question, the general student fee at LCCC is just under $7 right now. At Albany County campus, it's about $1.50. And then there's also the community college commons fee, which is the lounge fee. That's $1.50 too. So I think collectively it's $8.50 here, and then a few dollars over at the Albany County campus. Well,
Thank you, Joe.
yeah, and just to state, I was very impressed taking this process in 1 year to a process that was objective, rigorous, transparent. Really was an impressive approach, and so I thank the committee, the students, Jenny and Jerry and others who helped with the process, because I think it certainly took us in the right direction.
Thank you so much. I want to say that I've seen this happen in other groups I've been in, where you begin a process like this and it just gets so much better every year because you refine it and refine it and refine it, and then you have a history of the direction you're going in, and I love it. Thank you so much. Okay, we're coming back to Carol Hoagland.
Madam Chair, trustees, you have in your packet the same budget that was presented in May. I want to say April, but in May, and there have been no changes to that. This is the second reading of the budget. The approval of the budget will happen in July, and in that information, it'll be updated a little bit with the carryover that that's been determined at that point in time. But that should be the only change that's made in the budget for approval. But do you have any comments? We're in the comment period on the budget. We did discuss different areas of it at the finance and facility meeting, and I believe those questions were answered, and if not, we can bring them forward. And
Questions? Wow.
Madam Chair?
Yes, trustee Moser.
Didn't think you'd get off that easy. Actually, it may be really easy. I just wanted to ask Dr. Schaefer, in relation to this, if in fact, we talked about it at the F&F meeting, the innovative funds, that's within the context of this budget. I noticed in the reading through that, there are commitment dates by August, I believe, of 13, and I'm just wondering where we're at of that relative to this budget, the impact it has on it.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Trustee Mosher, just for some context, in one of the early presentations of the proposed budget, we talked about, and I believe to meet your intent, freeing up the one-time, or the 1 mil monies to not have them associated with base commitments, personnel services, things like that, and actually freeing those up so that we would have greater discretion to use those for facilities planning, facilities projects, and other things. Because of some of the good work that we did this year and really starting to shift money, we were able to actually free up the vast majority of the base commitments on the 1 mil outside of the funds we put towards the Pine Bluffs Outreach Center. 200,000 of that is moved over and essentially being set there in what I'm proposing to be used for innovation funds. Funds that the campus can access for projects that we believe will help solve current issues, problems, challenges that we face, grab onto opportunities to help us improve the rate at which our students succeed and all that great stuff. So that money is in the 1 mil. It is proposed and sitting there as one-time funds, meaning it would be requested and expended within this fiscal year, although we would anticipate any leftovers would be carried over and give us greater ability into the future. I have drafted, as you said, as Trustee Moser was referring to, guidelines, if you will, in a process in which we would solicit proposals to access these innovation funds on campus. There is 2 proposed distribution dates in there, one at the end of August and one at the beginning of December, I believe. You'll notice they're highlighted if you have a copy of it because they're being looked at right now. But one of the things that we wanted to ensure is that for people that are currently thinking about these projects, and we do have a couple of them on campus, I believe, right now, that as soon as faculty are back, we'll have the process to collect, review, and ultimately approve funding in round 1 so that we can get those projects off the ground right away. But we'll save some of those funds also for December so that people, as they get back to campus, have an opportunity to think and develop in doing that, recognizing that many of our faculty are off contract right now. And so that's why that proposed distribution. It is all conceptual. Until you approve the budget, we don't know if those funds are available or not in the 1 mil. Once you approve that, then we would implement the process. And, for the folks that I know are sort of eyeing it, we get them to get their proposals in and start moving towards that date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't have a question.
Yeah.
I have a comment.
Please.
And I brought this up at our finance and facilities meeting. And the first time we received the budget for the next fiscal year, and I reviewed it, and the thing that really hit me were 2 things. One was the reduction in the operating expenses, which is heavy. It's a heavy hit. And as I understand, it may be less than what it was originally thought to be, and we may have more refinement on that later on. And the other thing that I saw was in Dr. Schaefer's comments to us in the Preparing for the Future section, quote unquote here, further cuts will likely result in the closure or elimination of programs and services. That hit me like a sour apple. I mean, really, the concern is, okay, what type of programs and services are going to be possibly revised? I'd rather use that word, revised. And as I understand it, there is a process going on with the faculty to actually look at those type of revisions in the event we do not have the funds to cover this budget, as we are hoping we're gonna have the funds. And I'm pleased to hear that there is a process that you have, Dr. Schaefer, that you are reviewing what these possible program revisions would be. And I'm pleased to hear that, because I think that's really advanced planning. It shows the leadership in looking at negative things, if they were to happen, as well as preparing for making the various institutional changes that you have implemented since you've been here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson. I appreciate those comments. We are working on an updated approach to programmatic analysis, and at the same time, we've been doing it on an ad hoc basis with areas like financial aid and security and other co-curricular areas to get a handle on where we are at. We believe that there are considerable efficiencies to be gained, and if we can do that, my hope is any future budget cuts would mitigate the impact that we would have on truly having to move away from current programs or services. But the one thing, I guess, in full disclosure, I would suggest that by the very nature of who we are and what we do, at times we'll have to stop doing some things and start doing other things. And so this process will not just be a mechanism in which we evaluate and say, what happens if we get less money? It'll really be a mechanism in which we can look at and either find ways to invest in the areas that are doing really well, help those that are struggling in some areas to improve, or ultimately decide that we can get a better return for the taxpayers' dollars, for our student dollars, by redirecting those resources to other areas. And so we will try to get a much more objective evaluation of where we're at from a programmatic and a service basis to be prepared for that. But my concern, as I stated in my memo, still holds true. I think we were creative and we dug deep, and in some cases, as you pointed out, in the operating expenditures, deeper than what I would have liked. I believe we will still have funds for operating expenditures should we need them, because I think we'll be more efficient than what the budget currently shows in regards to the management of our part-time personnel. But they're deeper, and if we have to take another reduction as an institution, to be able to continue to do that, I don't know that we can continue to dig into operating expenditures, and I don't know that we can continue to dig into personal services without stopping doing something. So we'll strive for efficiency, strive to find better ways to be more productive with the resources that we have, but we also have to be realistic.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Trustee.
Dr. Schaefer, in light of some information you shared regarding some changes, I'm wondering if board priority number 3, investment in student services, that's page 3 in the intro, will there be some changes in that area as we see any revisions there? Or is that within the context of what you already have indicated? And I'm referring to the email that we...
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to, because I know you have a keen interest in, how did I phrase it, validating the management actions that would fit with your guidelines. There was one area where we have deviated, I would say, and at least are proposing to deviate. I don't think that it's in the student services area. We're still committed to advancing and developing the new model of student services that focuses on holistic case management and many of the things that I know the people on strategic planning have been reading about. When we went through the budget or the position request process this year, and we actually implemented a new HR priority plan, it did not come online at the same time that the budget process did, and a lot of things didn't work the way we wanted it to. It is a great first start at prioritizing. We had 5 faculty positions requested, and of those 5, they're all valid within a certain context. Of those 5, 3 were really valid within a necessity for this year. One of those is a faculty position for the welding program. One of them is a social sciences or social sciences sociology position at the Albany County campus, which I think has probably the greatest justification based on adjunct use and enrollments and all that good stuff. One is a mathematics faculty, an additional mathematics faculty, and what they've proposed, or what the division has advanced, is with a focus on developmental education. And then I believe we had one from mass media, multimedia, and another communications faculty. The first two I think are valid, and we can put those to use immediately. I think there's still need and opportunity in mathematics. What we've sort of agreed to is to sort of hold that aside, those resources, because we currently have, I think, 2 positions in there already that are currently open. And I could be wrong, there could be a third with Elaine Parks' retirement. So this would make another one. So the likelihood we're going to replace all 3 of those and get those going right away. We've decided to say that's sort of what it's for. We're going to put it there. Let's get these other ones going and see how a new leadership there will play out. And then, to be honest, with the other 2, like the communications, and I know there's great potential in even in the mass media, multimedia opportunity, looking at enrollment data and needs and current demand and what we have on the table. We would be adding faculty that I don't know that we could fill load at this point. I think they're good indications of where we may need faculty into the future, but actually investing in those this year, we'd be putting money into something that I don't know that we fully need at this point or that we would utilize. Not that those needs aren't there and there's opportunity, just not this year. And so one of the proposals and a grouping of the positions that came forward in the process actually dealt with instructional designers. We have an interest in actually strengthening the role of instructional designers on campus. And one of the proposals that was discussed at President's Cabinet that I ultimately said I think we should move in that direction is to add an instructional designer, which will ultimately free up those faculty that have release time to do instructional design at this time, and actually have some of those faculty go and spend the full time teaching. So in essence, we're still moving faculty resources into instruction by adding an instructional designer. I don't think one will actually release all of our instructional design faculty, but I think it's a step that we can take by putting an additional full-time instructional designer to help with all the curricular changes we're anticipating, get those faculty back into the classroom full-time. So I believe it meets your priority and your interest. It's just a different approach than what I've been communicating, and so that's why I shared that email with you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, something you said brought up another point, though. You've hired a sociology, or you're proposing to hire a sociology instructor for the Albany County campus, and you said that you could make a justification for that on the basis of adjunct load and so forth. But another thing that you really need to think about there is how easy it is to find qualified adjuncts. And in Albany County, it should be pretty easy. I mean, there's an awful lot of graduate students at the University of Wyoming, a number of whom would probably not only do a good job, but would like to teach as adjuncts. And so, to what extent does your thinking include how easy it is to get well-qualified adjuncts when you think about new faculty positions?
Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty, I'm actually surprised that I think I just heard you encouraging us to look at adjunct. But it's valid, and so here's the thought process, and I can look at Dr. Stallnecker, and he can help me out if we want here. Yes, I think that when we look at the availability of adjuncts, many in the humanities and social sciences are much easier to come by than those in the other sciences, and that's no different at the Albany County campus. And in fact, I think we've had, Lynn, you can nod your head, I think we've had some very good adjunct faculty in this area.
We have that.
One of the struggles, though, is that we have so many adjunct faculty at the Albany County campus that managing those is a struggle, and helping really advise and work with our students is a struggle. It's not that the quality of the instruction isn't there, we have availability, but it's the other things you get with the full-time faculty that I think would really help the campus that's growing over there, and just being able to manage that. As I understand it, our biggest issue with this whole process is actually finding an office to put this person in should we hire him or her. That seems to be the biggest challenge. So that's the thought process. It's not just the availability and how easy it is, but it's also what are the additional benefits that a full-time faculty would bring to us, given the fact that we've got the enrollments, we've got the course loads, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I agree entirely with you that it's good to have full-time faculty on campus for the benefit of the students. But at the same time, you can easily hire full-time faculty in areas where it's really easy to get very good quality adjuncts, and then you seem to ignore at times places where it's really tough to get good quality adjuncts. And all I really wanted to know was what entered your thinking along those lines. And I am perfectly happy with hiring adjuncts, and I'm perfectly happy with hiring full-time faculty. I want to do what's best for the students.
To move along with what Kevin said, over my 37-year career, I was told by many people, anyone can teach social science.
Do you want that in the minutes?
Wait a minute.
Oh, not going there, no.
Bill, are you and I at odds here?
No, I'm agreeing. I'm saying it's easy.
What language are you speaking? No, what I'm saying is, at the University of Wyoming, it really should be much easier than it is here.
Well, that's what I'm saying, it's easy to find somebody, anyone can teach.
We better stop this conversation. Thank you. Anyone else? So, do you have something else you want to talk to us about, Carol? And I know we
Up
have an
next.
approval item here.
Yes. Moving to the current year's budget, so put the budget request for next year out of your mind. What we're doing now is looking at a budget amendment for the current year. And we generally bring that to you in June, any of the changes that we need to make before the year end. And we have a few. In the unrestricted fund, we, in part of the process of the financial aid cleanup that Judy was talking about, we also had some sponsored billing entries, and it's really just an accounting cleanup that hadn't been made for a couple of years. And so in order to have that happen, we had to expense those. So we expensed them through the scholarship line, and to enable to have, in order to have budget to cover that, we took it from the operating reserve. So you'll see a $50,000 transfer from the operating reserve to the scholarship line.
Did everybody see that?
Okay, and then additionally, we had, for our community services, we had additional revenue and expense of $50,000, so that's just recording the activity that was over and above the, what we had initially budgeted for community services. And that would be our non-credit kinds of courses. In the restricted fund, we always put an estimate in there based on what we think might be coming down the pike as far as grants and federal grants and state grants. And we did have some additional grants that came forward this year to the tune of about $300,000. And you can see what those are: the Trade Adjustment Act Consortium for Healthcare, Education Online, the Plumbing Apprenticeship, Distance Education, VA Healthcare, and the Wyoming Department of Health Online Training. Additionally, we had direct loans, additional direct loans that were dispersed for $325,000, and that's a revenue and expenditure increase on both of those in the restricted fund. In the auxiliary fund, the summer housing and the residence hall budget had been operated by two different entities, and the summer housing budget would pay for some of the staff that work in the residence life, and then they were reimbursed for that. And that entry had not been done for, I think, 3 years, and so we're making that up this year to the tune of $60,000. So you'll see an adjustment from the summer housing budget to the residence hall budget in the auxiliary fund. We also had an increase to the CTE training grant that we had from the Warren Air Force Base. So we have an increase of $75,000 in both revenue and expense in the auxiliary fund. That's all the changes to the budget, the current year budget. So the amendment that we're asking for approval on is based on that activity.
Thank you, Carol. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chair, I'd move that the Board of Trustees approve the budget amendments as presented.
I'll second.
Bill seconds. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I guess it's unanimous once again. Thank you, Carol. And Jane. Okay. Policies ratified by College Council, June 15th.
Yep, Madam Chair, members of the board, if I may, as part of the policy development and approval process, as you know, we have a policy and procedure process that routes through the campus, through College Council, through President's Cabinet, College Council, ultimately to me. Policies then move forward to you for your approval. There are actually 5 policies. Because we don't have a study session in July, we're bringing them to you today for information. Happy to answer any questions if you want, but really it's for your information to read and consider them over the next month, and then we'll ask you in July to actually approve them.
Has everyone had a chance to look at them? I know we just, I don't think we've had a chance to look at them.
No, ma'am, and that's why they're there. This is your.
Okay, this is
You'll
our
have a month to
information.
review them.
Right, we'll have a month to review them, and we'll vote on them at the July meeting. Okay. Thank you. Additional items for our information only, number 12. The contract, I have a question, but I'll ask you later. Okay.
Madam Chair, these are letters that are quite complimentary to various people at the school, and I hope everybody reads them.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, they are.
I haven't seen them yet. Next meeting and events, I think are July 17th is our next board meeting, dinner at 6, business meeting at 7, and August 21st. We just have business meetings both of those months.
And Madam Chair, for my clarification, your July meeting and where you consider the budget will also be a public hearing on the budget. Is that correct, Vicki? Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Any new business?
Madam Chair, I have some
New business, great.
business. I just want to tell you, the campus in general, and Joe especially, a couple who has always participated in the John and Esther Clay event told me this year that it was by far over the top and the best one they had ever seen.
Oh, great.
Very nice.
Nice.
I believe I was there at that.
That was a Mike
program.
Bailey presentation.
It was
that-
amazing.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
It definitely was delightful, informative, entertaining. My wife's an artist. She came away with a better appreciation for watercoloring. She's not much for watercoloring, but she enjoyed that presentation. It was, and also the gallery and what was exhibited was fun to go around and look at. You know.
Well, I want to thank the foundation, especially Lisa Trimble, for putting on that event, and Tara and I attended as well, and I signed up for next year's workshop. There were only 22 allowed, and by the time it was over, there were 21 signed up, and I got the last spot, so I hope I make you proud. But it was wonderful, and John and Esther Clay were just very generous, and I think she just loved that kind of thing. And Joe really made us proud that night by his comments there at the event. Thank you for attending.
No, you did
Yeah,
well.
he was buttering
You
her
did
up.
well.
And she loved it. She loved it, so.
Madam Chairman, I'd also like to tell you of 2 events that are forthcoming. On September 6th, the Kevin Kilty and the Vanda High family are being inducted into the Cheyenne Frontier Days Hall of Fame, and I think it behooves all of us to be there.
Yes.
Whoa, baby.
What I might mention is that Kevin Kilty is not being inducted into Hall of Fame. It's the
The
family.
whole family is. Well,
Oh,
you're part of the family.
will you be there?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so we might want to attend.
Somebody better keep the family in line. That'll be
I don't know if that's us, but go ahead, Bill.
The other thing, and I have to say I'm very thrilled over this, the Cheyenne Frontier Days Old West Museum asked Marcy and me to be the honorary chairs for the Carriage Ball, which will be October 5th. So I hope all of you will come to that too.
Do you think
Lovely.
that is wonderful? Do you think the college could pay for it?
We did last year.
They did last year.
Yes.
Fabulous. Congratulations.
Well, it's a nice honor, thanks.
It is a nice honor. Any other new business or
Madam-
public comment?
Madam Chair, just an update for all board members. There was an advocacy meeting yesterday at 2 o'clock for the WACCT. And basically, we're looking at approving the budget for the coming year, which will include having a facility on 20th and Warren, I believe, an office for the trustees. And that's for the statewide association. Steve Ballmer's location, so to speak. And then we also discussed Joint Appropriations Committee meeting, which we will be having representation at. I'll be there, and Dr. Schaefer and I think Carol will be there. In addition to that, Kevin Kilty will be representing us in Gillette, along with me. I'll ride over there with Joe and Carol, and we'll be at the the Wyoming Community College Commission meeting on that Friday then. And major maintenance is an issue at the JAC meeting, and then performance funding may or may not. I have not had a chance to look at the commission agenda. Do they have that on there?
It's right here in the binder if you are interested. It's in there. I don't know if it's specifically pulled out one way or the other.
I was looking under tabs there, expense updates, reports.
It is on your financial report, and I think it's embedded within the conversation about budget process, zero-based budgeting, all that good stuff.
Okay. And the last thing I'll tell you from WACCT is I did receive a report from the president, and he shared with me, and I'll get it out to all of you, a rundown. It's the minutes basically that Freeze from Western Wyoming College will provide in terms of the last meeting of the CCA in the issues and the tracking. It's rather extensive. I think it's about 6 pages. I read through it and need to read about 3 or 4 more times, so it's kind of intense, but I'll share that with Vicki and let her send it out. And that's all I have on that, unless anybody has any other questions on that.
Thank you, Ed. Good report. So if we have no other meeting things to say, I would like to adjourn this meeting, and I want you to all know that we are ending before 9 o'clock this evening, and so Mrs. Brooke Shaver doesn't have to tune in to see how far along we are.
I hope she was watching. Carol, you did skip public comment.
Oh, I asked for public comment, but does anyone want to say?
Or did she?
I
She
did.
asked all along.
Kinda like
sort of
other business.
got embedded in Ed's comments. Does anyone hear from the public? Okay, we're just.
Public got tired.